from an assistant being stabbed by multiple swords to one magician who blew himself and his assistant to pieces, we take a look at 10 magic tricks that went horribly wrong. Number 10. George Lalonde. The average person who goes to see a magic show understands that illusions are generally a bit of misdirection. In 1936, at a show in Montreal, Henry Howard became agitated when magician George Lalonde was getting ready to cut his assistant in half. Rather than allow the illusion to continue, Howard rushed the stage, grabbed a sword, and, in what he perceived as an act of heroism, stabbed Lalonde in the neck. Fortunately for the magician, he survived the attack, while his attacker explained to police that he, quote, couldn't bear to see a woman cut in two. Number 9. This particular elaborate deception, thought up by Swedish conjurer Balabrega, involved 6 assistants dressed as moths being consumed by flames. In 1900, he took his tour to Brazil. Generally, he would use gasoline to create the flame, but the theater in which he was performing wasn't properly equipped, so the magician used acetylene instead. Acetylene doesn't exactly have the same properties as gasoline, other than the flammability. During preparation, the acetylene ignited and literally blew the magician and the assistant nearby to pieces. Number 8. The Chinese Imposter. By pretending to be established Chinese performer Chung Ling-soo, turn-of-the-century vaudeville veteran William Ellsworth Robinson achieved tremendous fame in Europe. His exotic routines and personality captivated audiences, yet he professed to speak no English. Sometimes his performances would include a trick where rifles were aimed at him and fired. The weapons were supposed to be set up as to not fire real bullets, but we're pretty sure you can imagine what happened. After the rifles discharged actual ammunition, the audiences figured out one of the magician's tricks. After shouting, "I've been shot!" they figured out he did speak perfect English. Number 7. Sigmund Neuberger. German magician Sigmund Neuberger, better known as the Great Lafayette, was actually the highest-paid magician of his time. A well-known animal lover, his terrier, Beauty, was his greatest love. His terrier, Beauty, was a gift from Harry Houdini himself. Beauty was spoiled with a lavish lifestyle, 5-course meals, diamond-studded collar, and its own suite. Beauty unfortunately died 4 days before the opening of his show in Edinburgh. Lafayette and the city council struck a deal. He would allow his body to be buried there if they allowed Beauty to be buried in the nearby Pierce Hill Cemetery. May 9, 1911 was the opening night of the show. Lafayette's signature trick, the Lion's Bride, caused a fire that became out of control. While Lafayette managed to escape the building, he went back in to attempt to save a horse that was part of the show. Since Lafayette didn't want anyone sneaking into the show, the side doors of the venue had been locked tight. This caused 11 deaths in all, one of them being Lafayette himself. Number 6. Joe Burris. In the spirit of the great Harry Houdini, whom this magician compared himself to, Joseph Burris performed a Halloween night spectacle. Joseph Burris created a trick where he would settle into a glass coffin and have 9 tons of dirt and cement poured over him on Halloween night 1990. In Fresno, California, at Blackbeard's Family Fun Center, Burris was chained up and lowered 7 feet into the ground. As the cement truck began to pour its load over the contents of the coffin, Burris made 2 attempts to escape, but the chain around his neck was too tight. The weight of the cement crushed the coffin and caused him to suffocate. It turns out Burris did have something in common with Houdini. They both died on Halloween night. Number 5. Genesta. Although Harry Houdini is not actually on this list, as you can tell, he was the inspiration for several other magicians and illusionists. He rose to fame in part because of his milk can escape. You know the one, where a magician is stuffed into a big container of water, locked in, and has very little time to escape before they drown. It's been imitated several times. Well, in 1930, Roydon Joseph Gilbert Raison de la Genesta, or simply Genesta, was one of those trying to pay homage to Houdini. It turns out locking a lid on the container didn't make much difference, because the secret of the trick was that the entire neck of the container could come off. Unbeknownst to Genesta, the prop itself had been dropped during transit. A dent in the neck caused it to be inoperable, so it wouldn't open during the trick. Although they were able to rouse Genesta briefly at the hospital, He did end up dying as a result of the accident. Number 4. Jeff Rayburn Hooper. Jeff Rayburn Hooper, a 23-year-old magician, was practicing a trick where he had to escape from shackles while being submerged in the lake for a performance later that afternoon. He handcuffed himself and jumped into Winona Lake to rehearse the stunt. He proceeded to swim about 100 yards from shore and was able to get out of the shackles. As he surfaced, he began yelling to his assistant for help. He was unable to swim to shore because of the high winds. Those same winds prevented rescuers from being able to reach Hooper in time, and he drowned in 6 feet or 1.6 meters of water. Number 3. Princess Tenko. In the city of Sabai in 2007, Japanese performer Princess Tenko, known for her outlandish costumes, put on a show that became a spectacle. She was locked into a box and given a short time to escape before she would become a pincushion for 10 incoming swords. You see where this is going, don't you? If she would have escaped in the allotted time, first of all, her name wouldn't have been on this list. Second of all, she wouldn't have had several broken ribs and a broken cheekbone. That's right, amazingly, she didn't die. She even finished her performance before seeking medical attention. Number 2. Janaka Basnayaki. Survival basics include food, water, and, probably most importantly, air. Being deprived of food will eventually kill you. Being deprived of water will kill you faster. But being deprived of air will do the trick very quickly. This brings us to the sad story of Janaka Basnayaki, a 24-year-old from Sri Lanka. He was trying to beat the world record for longest time buried alive. Illusionist David Blaine is famous for having spent 6 days buried alive. On a side note, David Blaine has a team of experts to help him. When most magicians pull off this illusion, there is some sort of trick that they don't actually spend the entire time buried. Unfortunately for Janaka, he wasn't a professional. In 2012, he convinced his family to bury him in a 10-foot deep pit covered with wood and soil. 7.5 hours later, after being dug up, he was found not breathing and was pronounced dead at the hospital. What makes this story even sadder is that he wouldn't have got into the Book of World Records anyway. In fact, they don't even recognize this as a record because they don't want people attempting it due to its dangerous nature. Number 1. Charles Rowan. Suspense and tension are everything in magic. Often when a magician or illusionist is holding his or her breath underwater, the audience is holding theirs as well and waiting to see what will happen. One magician who understood the appeal of melodrama was South African Charles Rowan. This is a main reason why Rowan repeatedly performed a stunt where he was secured in a straitjacket while a car sped toward him at 45 miles per hour. Although Rowan performed this stunt regularly, it only takes one small thing to make the whole thing fall apart. In 1930, while performing in front of a sizable crowd, Rowan failed to free himself from the straitjacket and the car ran right over him. His leg was almost completely severed, and he bled out fairly quickly, which ended his life. Fortunately for the driver, Rowan wrote a letter of exoneration, releasing him from any responsibility in case something like this happened.